on Gauteng restaurants have taken place in the past week. We've seen several arrests that have been made. Now, in the latest raid, 3 employees, including a manager, were arrested at Mug and Bean restaurant in Mdluli, Pretoria. Yesterday, this happened. They were arrested for not having proper documentations. The blitz by labor inspectors, immigration officials, and police follows complaints of non-compliance, relating to several labor regulations. GIWUSA President Mametlwe Sebei joins me now for a little bit of a chat on that. Good to have you, and thank you very much for your time. Does this bring any sort of relief that the authorities are beginning to actually act on this non-compliance?
Not at all. I mean, the question is, what are they really addressing, right? And to understand what they're addressing, you've got to go to the original complaint of the worker who lodged a complaint about the treatment of workers in that establishment, but also many other hospitality outlets across Gauteng, Sandton, and so on. And what did she complain about? She complained about the fact that in the restaurant industry, you have a situation wherein workers, not only are they working without a basic salary, they are made to depend on tips from clients. Even those are deducted by the establishment that cut a share on the tips offered by the client to the service staff, but also that they are made to buy their own uniforms, but also their own work equipment. In this case, cigar cutters, cigarette lighters, and you mentioned all of that, right? That is a problem that we have with a very super exploitative regime that is, of course, the reality in that, but also similar industries across the entire hospitality chain, right? Yeah. Restaurant, hotels, you mentioned all of that and so on. And that's a problem that has got to be addressed. Yeah. And what these restaurant owners are doing, they are weaponizing the migration of mainly, African workers from Zimbabwe and other things and so on. And the fact that most of them are left without documentation by the department that it today engage in gimmicks that appears to be addressing the issue when they are far from addressing the real issue. The reality is that many of these workers are undocumented, not for lack of attempt and for lack of determination to accept documentation, but simply because the government in this country has taken an increasingly xenophobic policies that make sure that workers can never obtain a proper documentation, particularly if they are of foreign migration, foreign background. And that is exactly what the employers want. Yes. Nothing. You can never gift an employer the best gift other than a worker who is stripped of every right that they are entitled to in law that protect them against a very super exploitative regime.
So how do you suggest this should be approached? I mean, as you're articulating 3 areas there, the area of employee exploitation, there is the area of documentation, and then there's the area of general non-compliance in terms of not labor laws this time, but in terms of health and occupation standards of these outfits that are being inspected. I mean, if this multidisciplinary task team is not doing the job, what will?
So there are very simple things that need to happen, right? One is not criminalizing the poor. The poor migrants that are in this country need documentation. And many of them, I can assure you that they do want to have a proper documentation. Government must assist them with that. That's the first thing that needs to be addressed. What needs to be criminalized is a criminal weaponization of undocumented migration by unscrupulous employers that are taking advantage of a precarious legal status of many of these workers in order that they impose a regime such as the one that the complainant in this particular matter actually complained about, where workers are working, without basic income in flagrant violations, by the way, of the laws on the national minimum wage, but also ministerial determinations in number of industries, as well as, of course, collective agreements that we reach in number of those industries where there is centralized bargaining. So that needs to be addressed. And how then do you address that as department? Department of Labor is ought to, have the Inspectorate for Compliance and Enforcement of Labor Laws. The reality is that that department is grossly understaffed. And the reality is that there are many employers that are violating rights of workers, not just migrants, by the way, but actually many South African workers in security, in cleaning, service and other things and so on. As I'm talking to you now, I'm having meetings here with security that are contracted to government departments here in Sekhukhune. Many of the securities, government actually pay 20,000, 22,000 per security, but when you look at workers, they are being paid 5,000, and in some instances, actually paid well below even the national minimum wage. Now, these issues that need to be addressed, and the way that the current government should be able to address them is to ensure that we bolster Inspectorate for Compliance and, of course, enforcement, so that there are enough inspectors, they are well equipped, but as well as, of course, supporting a trade union movement.
Why do you think that is not happening? I mean, it's not the first time this issue of the visibility of the Inspectorate is being raised. We've seen other instances of events that take place at restaurants, and each time, I mean, we would ask the Department of Labor, where are these inspectors? When do they ever go to these establishments? Well, we have seen them working here in Gauteng over the past week, but it's not something that we see happening throughout the course of the year, which speaks to the point that you're saying that there are not enough of them, they're not well capacitated. And the question is why?
It is that the rule of law under capitalism, right, is about enforcement of the system of exploitation. For those that really have the ownership of the means of production, so that they are able to extract a surplus value of the workers at the highest rate possible. Let's be clear about it. And that's the reason when you look both in terms of the laws, but also their enforcement, they are invariably biased against the working class and, of course, in favor of employers. Just take an example, right? A simple crime of theft, which just means taking something that does not belong to you, depriving the owner of that without their permission, right? That is supposed to be a simple, straightforward. If a worker, being a teller, borrow himself money from a thief in a shop, that's a criminal case. But when the employers make deductions that are meant to pay provident funds of the workers, make deductions that are meant to pay the insurance in case workers fall into unemployment in terms of the UIF, and many other statutory deductions that seek to protect the rights of the workers. Where have you ever had an instance of an employer being arrested for theft, for misappropriation of the funds that are meant either for insurance, for retirement, and other benefits of the workers? You will never hear that, because the law, the rule of law is not about equality, is not about the rights of the working class. It is about maintaining a system of exploitation that is predicated on the private ownership of the economy by the tiny elite of the capitalist class who have monopolized this ownership and are, of course, ruthlessly exploiting all of us. And this government, like, of course, the government of the ANC in the past 35 years, are committed, in fact, to making the environment as conducive for this kind of super exploitative regime as they can. I mean, just have to hear their rhetoric. When the DAs and other parties that have now entered a government of national unity, alongside the ANC themselves, when they say the problem in this country is about rigidity and lack of flexibility in the labor regime and the labor laws in this country, what do they mean? They mean that the current labor of the working class, where 60% of the workers are actually earning minimum wage and below, where about 75% of the workers are earning just above 6,000 rand. 55% of the population is living in poverty. They are saying that this level of exploitation and enslavement is not enough. And that is the reason that they are weaponizing migration in order to drive our condition, the conditions of the working class, even further, because they believe that the crisis of economy in this country consists in the fact that workers even have the most basic elementary rights. And I think that's a system that we need to change, and the government that we need to remove.
There are South Africans who might not agree with you on the question of weaponizing migration. They would say, yes, there are undocumented foreign nationals working at these restaurants, and they believe, of course, they are working there to the detriment of South Africans, and they don't believe that is a scarce skills that should warrant the department jumping in and arranging documents for those individuals.
Well, the issue here is that it's not government arranging documents for those individuals, right? Is that we have migrants in this country, and that's reality. A reality that doesn't start now. It is the reality that's always been with us and will always be with us. Let's be clear about it. The issue is you need a migration policy regime that regulate in order to give access. Not the idea that you're going to keep people out in the way that the ANC deluded itself. Not only has it not worked, it's never going to work. We know that from experience, right? Not even that is basically the most progressive and the just solution to the crisis, you know, of poverty in the whole of sub-Saharan continent. What do we need to do? Of course, we need to address issues of unemployment. And I'm sitting here in Sekhukhune as I'm talking to you now. There are mines that are under care and maintenance, meaning big corporations, mainly foreign-owned multinational corporations, are holding minerals and holding jobs and to the value of about 10, 30, 40,000 jobs. These are issues that need to be addressed. But also there's the issue of deindustrialization. So there are a number of areas there where we can be able to address unemployment, masking, creating millions of jobs that we need. What this government is
how do we address this area then? Because I'm pressed for time. I wanted you to talk to this issue of restaurants that are discovered to be paying waiters and waitresses in tips and commissions instead of giving them their basic salaries, therefore contravening the National Minimum Wage Act. It seems it's something that's happening broadly. Well, it seems to have been a thing that actually started this raid.
It's very simple, really. You know, the department needs to work with the trade union movement in making sure that we have inspectors that are willing to work with us. Every time we report non-compliance in the restaurant industry, in the hospitality, but also a number of industries where we conclude collective agreements, where we conclude, you know, where there are those need to be enforced. But I can tell you, you report the case at Department of Labor, they barely turn up with an inspector who are understaffed. But even when they do turn up, most of the time they go to an employer's office and they are told all these, you know, stories that are not reflective of the reality. They turn back, write a report, tell you that no, there's no problem there. That is a problem that we need. And that's the reason in the final analysis that we need to strengthen the labor movement. We need to make sure that we are more organized, but also we are able, through our organization, through our unity, and through our struggle, that we are able to enforce a decent conditions of employment, both in terms of fighting for decent minimum wage, which GIWUSA at the moment is campaigning that it ought to be 15,000 rand, but also in ensuring that we improve benefits and that, you know, the food allowance, the uniform allowance, the housing allowances, all these other conditions that we are fighting for, the retirement benefits, all of this must be entrenched into law, and that is going to be brought about the unity and the struggle of the working class. And we can't have any faith whatsoever in this government of neoliberal unity that is committed to driving down the conditions of the working class and facilitating super exploitative regime in the interest of the profits of the few capitalists that monopolize ownership of the economy and the land in this country.
GIWUSA President Mametlwe Sebei there joining us on that score of the raids that we have been seeing at various establishments, restaurants in particular, in and around the Gauteng province.